Well, what we did is we came up this edge right here, and basically this is a big flat on the right side of that edge. And I marked some fish on the graph. Didn't get any, you know, they weren't up next to the structure, they were kind of out. So I pitched out a little drop shot. You know, I mean, this is kind of like, I would say like power shotting more than open water drop shotting. You know, I'm using like 12-pound fluorocarbon, fat robo worm, and just kind of, you know, kind of pitching around these isolated little sage bushes. And, you know, I caught that one. Let's see if we can't catch another one real quick. You know, a lot of times these fish, they'll suspend off this edge, or they might be up on top of it, but try to swim bait, spinner bait, and flipping, and had to catch that one on a drop shot. So we'll see what else we can do. You know, basically what these fish are doing is, like I said, there's a giant flat, and they're going to spawn on this flat out here. And so these fish are all just staged out here, and you know, a lot of like 2 to 3 pounders, and occasionally you catch a big female, but you can see how fat that fish is. I mean, it's just full of, I think that's a small female, but just full of eggs, getting ready. You know, the water temp's like 55, 56, so they're gonna come up here on this flat and spawn. So we'll see if we can't catch a big one. There's another fish right off that brush. You know, like I said before, it's kind of like you're almost pitching a drop shot rather than a jig or something. I mean, I couldn't get him to bite that, and as soon as I started throwing the drop shot again, you know, it's 12-pound fluorocarbon, bigger worm. You know, this is the fat worm instead of the 6-inch straight tail. And basically, you know, I just pitched up right to that sagebrush. Right now my boat's in 18.5 feet. That bush right there is in 5. So I mean, there's a nice little ledge. I mean, you know, I'm 20 feet off that little bush. So, you know, it's just a kind of a finesse way to catch some fish that otherwise you'd fish right through. So we'll see if we can't get a big one. Maybe here in a minute I'll throw a swim bait, see if I can't catch a giant. All right, well, we caught several drop shot fish right here off this little break. Again, you know, I mentioned the 12-pound fluorocarbon that I was using. When I'm drop shotting out in open water, I like to use like a 732 Powell rod, just because it has a real soft tip, a lot of forgiveness. This rod here is a 733, 7 foot, 3 inches, 3 power rod. And the reason I like it is just because it has a real stout backbone. You know, when you're fighting fish around brush or you know, rocks and things of that nature, and they're pretty shallow, you want something that's going to get them away from that stuff. So that's why the 12-pound line, that's why the heavier action rod. You know, the 733 has a real nice soft tip, so you can detect those subtle bites, but when you lay into them, you got them. I paired that with the new Abu Garcia Premier spinning reel. You know, it's got that nano technology. You know, it's just a great combination, you know, for doing this kind of, I'd call it power shotting. But for now, we're done catching these fish. We're gonna go and run a couple other areas, see if we can't catch a big one. Well, we came off this flat and came down this side, just slow rolling the spinnerbait off this break. Caught this little pre-spawn.